Okay, so lesson 185 today. I want the peace of God. Incredible lesson. There's a lot in this one, so I'll stop and start, I think, in a few places, but I'll try not to get too far afield. But make sure if you're following along, a few people have told me now that they're following along my videos with their efforts at doing the lessons for the year, which is great. And I guess by now we're sort of halfway through the year, so you must have developed a few ideas of your own about processing your own thoughts regarding the lessons and doing them and things like that, rather than just taking my word for granted. But I do know that having someone as a reference is very helpful. I had several someones for a reference when I was doing the workbook, and it helped me no end. I guarantee you, it was invaluable, the assistance that it rendered me, and I was very, very grateful. But at the same time, I still did have to sort of sieve through the expressions of those individual someones, those mighty companions to me, and try to find my own awareness of what it was they were talking about. Oftentimes through asking within, help me to understand what this is about, and then usually you'll find a situation. And I had a moment where even lesson 1, nothing I see means anything, at the spiritual center that I was attending, an argument broke out. This is about 8 months after I started there. An argument broke out outside the lunchroom in the courtyard between two of the attendees, and it wasn't a physical fight, but it was a full-on. There was like an altercation took place, which threw me for a six, because it was totally outside of my ideas of what I thought a spiritual center should be about and everything. And I turned to Greta, who was one of the, I guess you would call her the mother hens of the center there, that she'd been there a long time and very experienced and everything. And I said to her, "What does that mean? What does this mean?" or something like that. She was Dutch, and she said to me, "Lesson 1, nothing means anything. Nothing I see means anything." But it took me that 8 months of reading the reviews every day for Nothing I See Means Anything, which is part of what we used to do there at the center. We read the reviews of the first 50 lessons every day before any meditation or anything began, just so everybody was on the same page. And which would take us about 30-40 minutes, and I would read that every day. Nothing I see means anything. But it wasn't until it became my experience, my confrontation with the idea that I thought something should mean anything, that I actually heard it. Right? So there's a difference between listening to something and saying something, and then hearing something actually and allowing it to drop in. Right, and saying something and hearing what you're saying. So, which is where the first part of this lesson is going to direct us towards understanding. Okay, so I'll just get into it. I want the peace of God. To say these words is nothing. Okay, to say these words is nothing, but to mean these words is everything. If you could but mean them for just an instant, there would be no further sorrow possible for you in any form, in any place or time. Okay, now that's really full on. If you could but mean them for just an instant. And I've had moments where I've been on my knees in prayer, and I would swear black and blue that I was truthful about what I was asking for my healing. Okay, but the thing that comes is all my words are egoic. Okay, all my prayer, everything is egoic. So every prayer I utter, every prayer I offer is tainted with ego. Even though I've given my life now a new purpose, a new direction, everything else like that, I'm still rendering these lessons across the facade of the falsity of my old self. Okay, so just because I pick up this book and it says lovely, beautiful things doesn't mean that's where I'm at. That may be a bit of a shock to the system. What, you mean I've got to go back and reinterpret all that crap the way I used to react to stuff? Yes, sorry. The mind has to be purified. That's the whole purpose of purification, right? Realizing that every word that comes from the mouth of man is nonsense, right? Is a lie, is an untruth, is the first step in realizing that I don't really know what integrity means, which is why I have the Holy Spirit to help me in all my affairs, including my prayer. Okay? So, if you could but mean them for just an instant, there would be no further sorrow possible for you in any form, in any place or time. Heaven would be completely given back to full awareness. Memory of God entirely restored. The resurrection of all creation fully recognized. No one can mean these words and not be healed. He cannot play with dreams nor think he is himself a dream. He cannot make a hell and think it real. He wants the peace of God, and it is given him. For that is all he wants, and that is all he will receive. Many have said these words, but few indeed have meant them. You have but to look upon the world you see around you to be sure how very few they are. The world would be completely changed should any two agree these words express the only thing they want. And I feel quite blessed. It's like in the dark night of my soul, all I wanted was peace. I mean, there was more to it than that. I wanted to be helpful if there was I didn't even know if there was a God. Not really. I didn't have a Course in Miracles. I just had a bunch of other learnings from other things that had slowly directed my attention towards the idea of a singular source of creation. But I knew within myself that if that was a benevolent and all-loving God or all-loving source, that was all that I wanted, and why couldn't I have that in my life? Something was out of whack, and I just wanted peace and a way to help to extend that peace and extend my certainty of the potential of that peace in each person as best I could, however that looked. And right now it looks like this video. So you have but to look upon the world you see around you to be sure how very few they are. The world will be completely changed should any two agree these words express the only thing they want. Two minds with one intent become so strong that what they will becomes the will of God. For minds can only join in truth. When we do our light sessions here usually on a Sunday, when we do our light sessions and we enter into our standing meditative efforts, we are entering into that willingness to allow the truth of the idea that I want the peace of God to be the only thing we want and all else to be purified. And anyone who's ever done any metaphysical work, healing, will know that that can be quite confronting. I don't have a better word than confronting. For minds can only join in truth. In dreams, no two can share the same intent. Okay, I think that's fairly straightforward. To each, the hero of the dream is different. The outcome wanted not the same for both. Loser and gainer merely shift about in changing patterns as the ratio of gain to loss and loss to gain takes on a different aspect of another form. Okay, so agreeing that you both want the same thing, sharing the same intent. Okay, so there's a recognition and an admission there from my own perspective that I don't really know what I want. I say that I want peace. I say that, but I don't know how that looks, and I don't know what it is that's going to be required of me to bring that about. And quite often it's my experience that when the mind is approaching a threshold moment where a shift in consciousness is about to occur, it can become quite terrifying or quite upsetting. And a deviation or a circuitous route back to the here and now, which could take anywhere from moments to months to years, is often like the escape plan of the ego mind. You know, I don't know if I'm explaining that very well, but learning that you're false, learning that your choice and your decision is not pure, not forthright, and not the only thing that you want, necessitates that all the other things that are hidden that you still want that you either are not admitting to yourself or are not aware of that you actually really want them, have to be relinquished, have to be released. And the process through that relinquishment is one of, let's say, a kind of an emotional purging, which can bring up great anxiety. All right, so, and all of the, oh yes, I only want God, all of that can be like, oh, holy cow. And, and I've had this conversation with quite a few people over the years where they've attempted a meditation and have felt themselves or experienced themselves being drawn into an abyss or an emptiness or a void, perhaps, or an out-of-body kind of situation, knew exactly what was about to occur and recoiled from it because of fear. Not fear of the unknown, but fear of the known. And you might think that that's ridiculous. Why would I fear the known? Because if all that can ever be known is self and self is love, why would I fear that? Okay? And it's not that you really fear love, but the memory of that first decision, the activation of free will, is the, what would you call it, the doorkeeper or the gatekeeper to that experience. Okay, so the idea of separation was terrifying. All you'd ever known was your father's love. And through the errant use of free will, cast yourself into a dream. And now it is through that same backtracking process we go into that tiny moment of terror, as it talks about in the Course, to confront that tiny moment of terror, to realize actually that there is no terror, because in the moment that you are willing to confront it, it ceases to exist, because terror and fear and all of that is an illusion. But the idea of it remains solid in the mind as the result of the very first decision made, and you can call that the fall, the separation, whatever. All right. To each the hero is different, blah, blah, blah. Loser and gainer merely shift about in changing patterns as the ratio of gain to loss and loss to gain takes on a different aspect of another form. Yet compromise alone a dream can bring, okay? Don't compromise. You're here to face that fear. You're here to take the journey. You're here to make that decision. Let's not compromise it, okay? And that'll be a lot easier not to compromise if you remember and hold in mind there that in your efforts, that if you do encounter fear, that that's actually perfect. That's a good thing. And you to stand there with the Holy Spirit and allow that transition through that imaginary idea of what might be fearful to be, it's like a curtain being pulled back, all right? To allow that to be dispelled for you by the grace of God, so that you can enter into the next moment of fearlessness where peace, the peace of God, can enter into replace the space, if you like, or the idea that fearful premise was occupying in the mind. Okay. Sometimes it takes the form of union, but only the form. The meaning must escape the dream, for compromising is the goal of dreaming. Minds cannot unite in dreams, they merely bargain. And what bargain can give them the peace of God? Illusions come to take his place, and what he means is lost to sleeping minds intent on compromise, each to his gain and to another's loss. To mean you want the peace of God is to renounce all dreams, for no one means these words who wants illusions, and who therefore seeks the means which bring illusions. He has looked on them and found them wanting. Now he seeks to go beyond them, recognizing that another dream would offer nothing more than all the others. Dreams are one to him, and he has learned their only difference is one of form. Okay, that's important to take that on board. It doesn't matter what avenue of interest you pursue out in the world, what dreams, hopes, desires, whatever. They're all the same, despite the fact that they seem different in form. Okay, they all end in death. And you might be saying to me now, well, there is no death. It's like, that's fine, but you don't believe there is no death. They're just words that you've learned from reading this book or the Bible or from other spiritual teachings. Right? That idea that there is no death has to be found in your mind, okay, and bypassed or gone or overcome, if that makes sense. because it has already been overcome there somewhere, and you're just bearing the witness to it. And this is the way that we're doing it. Remember, concepts are nothing. Experience is everything. And he has learned their only difference is one of form. For one will bring the same despair and misery as do the rest. It's funny. The mind which means that all it wants is peace must join with other minds, for that is how peace is obtained. And when the wish for peace is genuine, right? When the wish for peace is genuine, the means for finding it is given in a form each mind which seeks for it in honesty can understand. Whatever form the lesson takes is planned for him in such a way that he cannot mistake it if his asking is sincere. And if he asks without sincerity, there is no form in which the lesson will meet with acceptance and be truly learned. Right? You've got to really want this. I know it sounds awful perhaps to say it, but until you're done with suffering, until you've had enough of your own nonsense, you're not going to want this. Until then, it's fake it till you make it. Right? And perhaps it's better off to go out into the world and try to fulfill a few more dreams and bang your head against the wall a bit more. I really don't know what is for each one. You know, what's best for who. But in listening to these words, okay, if he asks without sincerity, there is no form in which the lesson will meet with acceptance and be truly learned. Okay? Let us today devote our practicing to recognize that we really mean the words we say. We want the peace of God. This is no idle wish. These words do not request another dream be given us. They do not ask for compromise, nor try to make another bargain in the hope that there may yet be one which can succeed where all the rest have failed. To mean these words acknowledges illusions are in vain, requesting the eternal in the place of shifting dreams, which seems to change in what they offer, but are one in nothingness. To mean these words acknowledges illusions are in vain, requesting the eternal in the place of shifting dreams, which seem to change in what they offer, but are one in nothingness. Today, devote your practice periods to careful searching of your mind to find the dreams you cherish still. What do you ask for in your heart? Forget the words. Oh, man. What do you ask for in your heart? Forget the words you use in making your requests. Consider what you believe will comfort you and bring you happiness. But be you not dismayed by lingering illusions, for their form is not what matters now. Let not some dreams be more acceptable, reserving shame and secrecy for others. They are one. And being one, the question should be asked of all of them, is this what I would have in place of heaven and the peace of God? Man, this is so simple. It's like Jesus walks past the merchant on the road to the market and says, give up the world and follow me. It's either yes or no. You know, that's really like where it's got to sit in here. Is there anything in the world I still want? Or do I just want the peace of God? Okay, so it's like the ego's premise is once I fix all these problems out here, I'll have peace. Okay, but the Holy Spirit is seek first your peace, and then all of those problems will cease to exist. And I guarantee you, I couldn't tell you what a problem is. I haven't had a problem for probably 2 decades. Not that things don't happen, but I no longer see them as a problem. They're little corrections in a course, you know, pretty much. They are one, and being one question should be asked of all of them. Is this what I would have in place of heaven and the peace of God? This is the choice you make. Be not deceived that it is otherwise. No compromise is possible in this. You choose God's peace, or you have asked for dreams. And dreams will come as you requested them. Yet will God's peace come just as certainly, and to remain with you forever. It will not be gone with every twist and turning of the road to reappear unrecognized in forms which shift and change with every step you take. You want the peace of God, and so do all who seem to seek for dreams. For them as well as for yourself, you ask but this when you make this request with deep sincerity. For thus you reach to what they really want and join your own intent with what they seek above all things, perhaps unknown to them but sure to you. And I remember one of my earlier teachers who would say that there are no unbelievers in the foxholes, which is an old World War I and II saying that when the bombs are falling all around you and everything is at its darkest moment and everybody's dug in praying like hell that one of those mortar bombs doesn't fall in their foxhole and kill everybody in there. It's like there are no unbelievers. All you've got left is prayer. All you've got left is that hope and that faith. So there's nothing. I mean, if you try to imagine it, if that you were marching off to war and you were in the middle of a war or a conflict, which is, apart from the appearance of things, that's what an average human experience seems to be mostly, one thing after another, there would be nobody in that war who would not be praying for peace. That's it. You want the peace of God, and so do all who seem to seek for dreams. For them as well as for yourself, you ask but this when you make this request with deep sincerity. For thus you reach to what they really want and join your own intent with what they seek above all things, perhaps unknown to them, but sure to you. You have been weak at times, uncertain in your purpose and unsure of what you wanted, where to look for it and where to turn for help in the attempt. Help has been given you, and would you not avail yourself of it by sharing it? Oh. Yes. No one who truly seeks the peace of God can fail to find it. All right? No one who truly seeks the peace of God can fail to find it, for he merely asks that he deceive himself no longer by denying to himself what is God's will. Who can remain unsatisfied who asks for what he has already? Who could be unanswered who requests an answer which is his to give? The peace of God is yours. For you it was created, given you by its creator, and established as his own eternal gift. How can you fail when you but ask for what he wills for you? And how could your request be limited to you alone? No gift of God can be unshared. It is this attribute that sets the gifts of God apart from every dream that ever seemed to take the place of truth. No one can lose and everyone must gain whenever any gift of God has been requested and received by anyone. God gives but to unite. To take away is meaningless to him, and when it is as meaningless to you, you can be sure that you share one will with him and he with you. And you will also know you share one will with all your brothers whose intent is yours. It is this one intent we seek today, uniting our desires with the need of every heart, the call of every mind, the hope that lies beyond despair, the love attack would hide, the brotherhood that hate has sought to sever, but which still remains as God created it. With help like this beside us, can we fail today as we request the peace of God be given us? And I had a moment, I just want to add this in here. I know I'm sort of dallying on a bit with this one, but it's a really cool little story. And I think I've mentioned this a few times, but when I first started doing the workbook lessons, I was housed at a community house, let's say, with a bunch of other brothers who were attending also, and it was an off-site house, who were attending also the healing center where I was going to, meditation center, spiritual center, whatever you want to call that. And I did my lesson 12, I think it was, at night before going to bed, and being early, in the workbook lessons, my mind was still very busy. I'd already experienced my enlightenment, and I was now attempting to ground that and to purify my mind, to true up to it, to true up to what was shown to me as a means by which to become useful, I suppose, to myself and to others. But I did lesson 12, and I did it with real integrity. I really wanted to do it, I woke up in the morning and my mind was perfectly blank. There was nothing in it, not one thought. And I felt, the night before, I felt like I was crushed in a warehouse full of boxes, all my thoughts and everything, and I had nowhere to move. I was completely penned in. And then the next morning, this intense or overwhelming sense of inner peace. I felt like a tiny white bird in a vast blue sky, able to fly anywhere I wanted. And that experience of deep, deep peace lasted about 3 days before my mind chatter started to creep back in, and I kept going with the workbook lessons. And of course today my mind has again been restored to that vast blue sky, and there is almost no chatter that is not of a conciliatory nature with this teaching. And it's the integrity, right? So, and I guess, like, even in a worldly sense, when there's something you really want, you'll put your heart and soul into it, into doing it, whether that's making a vegetable garden or whether that's helping someone or doing anything. Well, this is no different. This requires that you put your heart and soul into the integrity of the prayer of the heart for the healing of the mind that wants the peace of God. Okay, I only want the peace of God. That's it. Now, that's probably just lip service, or maybe it's not. But Jesus is saying in that book, many say these words, but few indeed mean them, and you only have to look around to see how few indeed they are. And having been a person who, prior to my enlightenment, would have sworn black and blue to your face that I was on a path of peace, my mind was anything but peaceful, and the truth of my situation conflicted drastically with the nature of my expression of what I was saying I wanted. The two things didn't marry up. It took quite some time and quite a lot of effort and mind training to be able to bring about that harmony, or that, I don't want to say balance, but that integrity. So, anyway, that's it. Another lesson tomorrow. Peace.